Hello, I'm Hugh Lunn. Welcome to the Frew YouTube channel. And what we're seeing here today is that at every tram stop in Brisbane, every lamppost is painted exactly like this, starting about there, finishing there with two red lines, the number of the tram stop, and hail trams here. Okay, this is Jimmy Shepherd. And what makes Jimmy really famous is he was a great Brisbane tennis player, and he was Rod Laver's doubles partner back in the early 60s. And he went over to America to coach for Rod Laver, and he was Rod's best mate. And Jimmy knows a hell of a lot about tennis, so we've got him here today to tell a few stories. Now Jimmy, you've just seen the picture of Hoden Rosewell here back in '54. What do you say?
It's a very interesting story. The selectors at that time, I think the Davis Cup was being played in Adelaide, and there was two young kids out there hitting on the main featured court. And one of the selectors said to the other, "Get those kids off the court." And the gentleman, Cliff Sparrow, I believe, said, "That happens to be our Davis Cup team. That's Lou Hogan and Rosewell." Because they were so young, 17, 18.
And Jimmy, you lived at Maruka, which isn't far from here, and you had an ant bed court in your backyard, and lots of we had a lot of great tennis players in Brisbane then. And you were telling me that you would look out at your tennis courts some Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons when you're having a hit, and there'd be a lot of great players there. Tell us.
Well, my parents bought a big old Australian home, the tennis court in the backyard, and Frank Walden, who was a terrific tennis player, unfortunately was killed in a car crash. Rod Laver both lived at our house, and Hugh's mate Kenny Fletcher lived up the road. Mal Anderson lived not too far away, and Ashley Cooper lived across at Mount Cravat. So at any given time, we'd have Rod and Fletch and Frank or Mal or Cooper over playing on the backyard on the court.
So you'd have
the neighbours would be leaning over the fence, they couldn't believe what they were seeing, you know.
You'd have 3 or 4 of the top 10
in the world, yeah. And at different stages, we had Lou Hogan stayed there, John Newcomb, Fred Stolley. So I mean, they were all Grand Slam champions.
So what do you think? Why do you think Australian tennis went downhill? And what did we have back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that we had?
That's a very good question. We always had at least 2 good players. Most of the time we had 4, even more. I mean, starting back with Brooks and Anthony Wiley, even though he was from New Zealand, and then we went on to Bromwich and Quist and Jack Crawford and Bromwich, and then Sedgman and McGregor, and then into Hoden Rosewell. And then we had Fletcher and Emerson, and Laver and Emerson, and Newcomb and Roach, Anderson and
So
Cooper.
why is it an advantage to have more than one?
Well, they feed off each other. See, since that era, we've only had one good player.
Yeah.
And, it's very hard to win the Davis Cup with one player. You need 2 players. I think we only had Pat Cash, who didn't have enough help. And then after him, it was Leighton Hewitt. So now it looks like we've got 2 really good young players. And then Rafter was the same situation, but they were never side by side together. And you tell the story about Kenny Fletcher, with him and Mulligan, how they helped. Because I happened to ball boy in the Davis Cup, I think it was 58.
58.
Yeah, and Pancho Gonzalez was doing the commentary, and he came down after the 3rd set and made them play tandem on Neil Fraser. And for the next year, I think Hoppen had Fletcher and Mulligan practicing serving to his backhand, and we finally won the cup.
Until Fraser couldn't miss a backhand a year later, which shows you what a great coach or tactician Harry Hoppen. So
he was a tremendous condition. He got everybody fit at the right time of year.
Now you've been coaching in America for over 40 years, Jimmy.
Long time.
And one of the comments you made to me is that coaching out here is totally different from there because of the old.
It's in America. Americans tend to take lessons all their lives. I mean, I tell you a funny story. I used to teach a guy in Florida who was 95 years old. He was actually on one of the America's Cup boats, and before every lesson he swallowed hydroglycerin pill, which used to scare the hell out of me. But that is an example of how long they take lessons for. And here, when I come back to Australia, it's the exact opposite. 99% of my lessons are juniors, kids. You know?
Yeah,
So it's a different mental attitude.
That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
And do you think the fact that we had an interstate competition, Jimmy was the last Queenslander with Hughes, wasn't it?
Hughes,
To win the Linton Cup, which was every state had a junior team.
It was a Junior Davis Cup.
It was a Davis Cup among the states.
Yeah.
And everyone was desperate to win it. And Anderson and Emerson won it, and Fletcher and Laver couldn't win it, and Gorman. And do you think that's what helped make us great?
Oh, yeah. We had the competition. I mean, you look at every weekend, you know, yourself. You know, we used to go away. There was always a tournament, and they were all, what's the word for it? All the different sporting goods companies would send their best players. I mean, we'd go out to Roma, St George, or Caboolture, or Wynnum, or Redcliffe. You know.
Yeah.
We always had tremendous competition.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's lacking today is we don't get the exposure in the newspapers.
Yes.
I mean, every day I go down to breakfast, I go to the sports page, and the first thing I see is 12 pages of football. Nothing on tennis.
Yeah.
And in the old days, there were 3 newspapers, and they all put at least 2 full pages about tennis every weekend. And the kids today, they don't have an opportunity to have a scrapbook. They get nothing to remember themselves.
Yeah. So, now Rod Laver, we all know Rod Laver. He won 2 Grand Slams 7 years apart. I think he was the fittest and best player ever. And people now say, oh, the modern players are much fitter and better. But when I look at a picture of Rod Laver is like barbed wire, and Federer is like ordinary wire. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, give me a classic example, Roy Emerson. You can't tell me that anybody was fitter than Roy Emerson.
No.
I mean, he was a champion athlete. Margaret Court, champion athlete.
Yeah.
And Rocket, the same thing. You know, I mean, we used to have an exercise called double knee jump, and Emerson would get up and about the 100. And I'd defy most of these players that they'd been 40.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a wrong thing to say. I mean, the tennis has changed today because of the equipment, and that's my opinion.
Well, you said to me that you can't wait for 20 or 30 years time.
They'll
People say Federer and Nadal.
They'll be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, the equipment's made all the difference in tennis.
Yeah. And the other thing we want to know is, you know, Rod stays at your house. He lived with you at Maruka in your family home when he came down from Rocky as a boy. You know, tell us a bit about what he's doing now.
And Rod is a wonderful person. He's a very generous person. I mean, he's also mentally probably the greatest of all. That's what made him so good. That's why he was able to win all the different Grand Slams. Whereas, you know, nobody's been able to do us this thing. You know. But it was mental toughness. I mean, we'd go to the gym 2 or 3 nights a week, and then we'd go running. And Dad used to take us to this park, which was about 10 miles away from where we lived. And if we didn't run X number of laps, he'd drive off the leg and make us run home. But Rocket was always urging me to go the extra lap, you know, so we didn't have to do that. But that's the type of thing, you know. I mean, he'd spend all day, he'd carry a squash ball in his pocket, just squeeze a squash ball. You know?
All day?
All day long, just squeeze.
Like for many years?
Yeah, he had a huge left arm.
You were telling me about how big his left arm is.
They actually, when I was in Newport Beach, California, they had the University of California at Irvine, they had one of the professors come over and they did a test on his arm. And they actually measured it as big as Rocky Marciano's boxers.
Yeah, they measured it with calipers.
Yeah, calipers. Yeah.
Well, when Kenny Fletcher imitated Laver, he always did that to get his arm up to the size of Laver's.
Yeah,
well, it's been very interesting, Jimmy. I'm sure tennis fans everywhere would love to hear that sort of information. So it's nice to have you back home in Brisbane.
Nice to be back. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ian McCauley and this is my wife Judy, and we're proud to be part of the promotion for the history of Milton tennis courts.